Alright, hello everybody and welcome back to the Deepvue tutorial. I'm really excited about this one because today we'll be covering the Deepvue Relative Measured Volatility or RMV indicator. This is a new indicator that we just introduced to the platform a couple weeks ago. It's completely unique and it can help a lot of traders identify those tight areas on the chart that can help them with entries and potentially lead to explosive moves to the upside or downside. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We'll cover how to add it to your charts and also go through a few different examples on multiple time frames using this indicator. So first, you can see it down here on my screen, but just to show you how to add it, let's go ahead and exit out here. What you want to do to add the RMV indicator is go up to the indicators button, give this a click, type in DV. This brings up all the different Deepvue specific indicators that we have. And let's go ahead and add Deepvue Relative Measured Volatility to our charts. All right, so it's now added to the charts, and just taking a high level view of this indicator, it essentially gives you the relative volatility compared to a certain look back period. So for instance, if the stock is currently extremely tight and is tighter than it's ever been in the past 15 days, this relative measured volatility RMV will be at a 0 level. However, if price is expanding and volatility is as high as it's been, looking back at the period, RMV will be at 100, and in between, if it's medium volatility, it'd be around 50, and so on and so on. So basically, it's giving you the relative volatility on a scale, on a range of 0 to 100, with 100 being price expansion, very wide ranges, and 0 being extremely tight, very tight ranges. So that's a little bit about RMV, and let's also cover now how to edit how it looks on the charts so it can suit your preferences. So let's go ahead and click the gear icon. The first option is to change your look back period. By default, we have it set to 15 as of right now. You can easily change this to suit your needs. For instance, if you make this a look back period of, let's do 100 and press OK, you can see how it changes the readings. Basically, the further back you're looking, the more data you're taking into account to get a measure of the highest volatility as well as the lowest volatility over that period. Obviously, for IPOs that don't have much price action, say they've just come public only 5 days ago, you'd want to use an RMV of less than that to get an actual reading. But I found for my purposes, which is more swing trading, position trading, a measure of 15 to 25 works pretty well. And by default, 15 is also a pretty good setting to have. So let's go ahead and change that back to 15. However, for more position traders or longer term investors, you might prefer a longer time frame, say 50 days or 100 days. And depending on the time frame you're looking at, say going over to a weekly chart, we'll switch things up as we get there to kind of suit that time frame. But staying first on a daily time frame, let's dive into more of the settings. So let's move on over to the style tab. And first you can change, of course, the plot, the color, the thickness of the line. I like to make it a little bit more prominent. You can also change how it's plotted. So you can do a line with breaks. You can do a histogram. You can do columns, any way that you prefer to see and visualize the information. Go ahead and use that. I personally like the line with a good solid thickness, but remember, a level of around 0 or 5 or below is very tight, and near 100 is pretty expanded on a relative basis. All right, so next up we've got these levels here. You can select basically where you'd like to draw some horizontal lines, which are reference points when using the indicator. So you can set this to 30, this one to maybe 15, and then you can see when it gets into the green zone, we're getting a little bit tight, then very tight, 15 between 15 and 5 and below, extremely tight. So whatever suits your preference, you can edit these zones, their colors, as well as the levels that you select. Then of course you can select which timeframes you'd like to see the indicator on to suit your own personal style. But let's go ahead and leave the indicator set up just like this, and now run through some different examples. So first things first, we've got CEIX here on a daily chart. It's got a bunch of nice tight areas, which I've highlighted in pink, that we can use to take a look at the indicator and its reading. So first over here on the left-hand side, you can see we go very tight for at least 3 days, and volatility, the RMV, drops right to zero. We get some price expansion to the downside. This shoots up, oscillates a bit, and doesn't really calm down until this point where we go tight for 2 days relative to this price action. And then further here, we do see a drop right here on this reading. But you can see right here, I'm going to skip this for just 1 second. Right here, you can see we once again get extremely tight and get down to that zero level. So here, on a relative basis, is getting tight, but not quite as tight as this relative to this price move right here. Then moving on, we've got some other tight areas here as well, and you can see each time the indicator goes to zero or close to that phi level. So it's a really nice way to objectively determine whether price is tightening, and for advanced traders to kind of confirm their own visual analysis, and for more beginner traders, a great way to learn to identify what tight price action looks like using an objective indicator, which hasn't really been done before. So that's a great example on a daily chart. Let's also now go over to the QQQ, and let's go ahead over to a 65-minute time frame and take a look on an intraday chart and see how this stacks up as well. So you can see back in this area, we got extremely tight. And once again, we go to zero. We see some spikes on gap ups and gap downs, but overall it does the exact same thing on an intraday time frame. Here we get tight as well. We see a dip under that 15 level. We get tight in here. You can see we go to zero. We get tight in here relative to prior price moves, and we once again go to zero. And even right now, relative to this price movement, we're seeing it go to zero. Even though we are increasing a little bit, we are tightening up over here on the right-hand side. So it acts the same way on intraday timeframes. You may decide that you prefer a different look-back period on an intraday chart versus a daily, but the same kind of rules apply. Going closer to zero means the price action is tightening up. Closer to 100 means it's expanding. So let's now go over to a monthly chart even, and go ahead and use this indicator. And let's use MNDY as an example. So here we still got a look back period of 15. You can see over the course of the price action that we're now right at that zero level. The past few months have been extremely tight. And you can see that it only started creating a value at this point because there hadn't been 15 days of price action. So let's go ahead and switch this over to, let's say, around 5. And now you can see that it starts plotting a little bit earlier. And we did have some tight weeks in here where it goes to zero, as well as here you can see price action was relatively tight. But once again, using this indicator with a look back period of 5, even with that, we're getting very tight readings the past few weeks. So once again, depending on the time frame you're looking at, you may decide to switch up the RMV that you would like to use, and you can basically set up a template for a daily, weekly, intraday chart using a different look back period on your RMV indicator. So that's a quick run through pretty much of the indicator. Let's go to one more example. Let's take a look at Tesla back in 2020. Let's switch this back to, let's say, 15. And let's scroll all the way back to this period here when it had a nice move. And let's even go back to 2019. We had big price expansion on earnings. Then volatility goes to nothing. This goes to zero. We move up. We get tight again. This goes to nothing. We move down, and again, with every tight area in here, you can see the RMV going to zero, or basically very close to 5 during this run. Moving forward, you can see after this waterfall down, we do tighten up for 3 days here, which is highlighted in the indicator. Then we start to see tightening again after the bottom is in from this correction. We start to put in higher lows. This is where we get tight once again relative to prior price action. We move up, and you can see with every point where this indicator goes to zero, we're seeing tightening price action, which visually you might not be able to pick up, or this just kind of confirms your own visual analysis, but this just kind of makes it easier. And again, very tight price action here. This goes to zero. Very tight price action here. And you can see that in this spot, even though price action is pretty tight, we are seeing a move up in the RMV indicator. And that's because looking at the past look back period, price action overall was extremely tight. So even though this was still tight on a total basis, this was a little bit expanded from this area. So let's actually move this over to, let's say, even 200. And there you go. Now you can see this is showing as tighter. So again, you might want to mess with the look back period and figure out what works best for you. I like a range of 15 to 25 personally. But you can see that even as we expand a little bit, the indicator, when it's declining, shows when price is tightening, and when it's basically increasing, we're seeing it in its expansion in price. And again, here we're getting very tight and the indicator goes to 0. So that's one last example of the RMV indicator. Hopefully you guys enjoy it and find it helpful and it adds to your analysis. We'll also be making the RMV score, which basically allows you to screen for this. So basically in just a few clicks, you'll be able to screen for stocks with RMV under, say, 20, under 10, under 5, and get tight price action stocks, a whole screen result list of that in just a few clicks. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to that. Let us know your thoughts down below on this indicator, any suggestions for how we can make it better, and I'll see you guys in future tutorials. Take care.